Hey, what's up? My name is Nelson, and before I start my video, I just wanted to say I I'm waiting for my results. I might have COVID, so it's a possibility that I won't be able to get the Venom video out too quick. I'm hoping that I don't have it, but I am waiting for my results. But I will get the Venom video out as soon as possible, and hopefully it doesn't affect me going to see Halloween Kills. Today I'm going to be talking about Scream 1996, directed by Wes Craven. Starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, and a lot more. First off, I love the marketing in this movie and how they. This is gonna be completely spoilery, but I love the marketing of this movie and how they they really marketed it as a movie that's gonna be starring Drew Barrymore. I mean, she was on the front cover of all the posters. She was in all the promos and the trailers and stuff, and it was a huge surprise when you find out that she just completely dies in the beginning, right? In the beginning of the movie, because Drew Barrymore was such a big actress. He still is today, but she was a huge actress back in the '90s. And I love, she gets the call. And all by herself, she's all by herself, and she gets the call. And she, you got the wrong number and hangs up, and then he calls back again and starts kind of flirting with her a little bit. So she's kind of like feeding into it, like, oh, all right, And he starts asking her, what her favorite horror movie is, and she says Halloween. Respect, but I love. Also, I do love all the references in this movie. I'll get to some of them, but I do love all of the references throughout this movie to other horror films. But he's calling her, and he's talking to her, and he says the line that he says, "I want to know who I'm looking at." It's so chilling, especially for the first time you watch this movie. And funny story is, the first time I seen this movie, I I was at Goodwill. And I was with my mom. I was like 12, maybe 11, 12, something like that. And I asked my mom to buy me Scream, and she was like, "No, you don't need to watch this. It's really scary." And I was like, So I ended up taking the tape and putting the Ghostbusters tape over it just so I can watch it. And I remember putting it in the VHS player and watching it all by myself at a very, very young age, and it just terrifying me for weeks. Just this movie chilled me to my very core when I was younger, and it is a terrifying movie if you think about it. I mean, this is so realistic. It isn't just like there's a lot of horror movies out there. Like, I mean, with other slasher movies like Friday the 13th and like Halloween and stuff like that. There's so much unrealism to it, and I'm not saying that I love those movies, but when Michael Myers gets shot in the face and lives, there's very much unrealistic stuff to that. He's very much supernatural. With this, it's just a regular person. That's what's terrifying about this, and especially how what makes it so creepy too is how unprofessional the killers are throughout this movie. But he tells her, though, I'm gonna gut you like a pig, and that's just that line in general is just. It's such a terrifying, and his voice just completely changes, and it's such a terrifying voice. And Roger L. Jackson, who voices Ghostface, what an awesome performance by him also. And I'm not, don't quote me on this, I'm pretty sure he is coming back for the fifth one. So that's very exciting. I couldn't imagine anybody else voicing Ghostface. It's just incredible. I love when he's making her answer, like, horror trivia. It's just, he asked her, who was the killer in Friday the 13th, and she was like, "It's Jason Voorhees." And he's like, "No, it's not Jason Voorhees. It was Jason Voorhees' mom." And I thought it was just, the ways around to get her to fail. And you see her here, they got, she's trying to save her boyfriend who's outside and all bloodied up, and when she fails and he just like guts the boyfriend, it's just. And that's when the title card hits. Yeah, it really sets it up to just be this crazy, crazy movie. And, you start to meet all the characters, and they're talking about what happened to Casey and all that, and they're trying to figure out who did it, and they're all sitting by the water fountain, and all the friends, they're talking, and Randy's trying to tell him, you could be the killer. He's telling Stu that he could be the killer because he dated her at one point. And it's funny because it's watching this movie again after seeing it for the first time. It's so obvious who the killers are throughout this movie. You would never know. At least I never could figure it out. I mean, you had your thoughts that it could be Billy, but Billy's the obvious choice throughout the movie. But just watching them talk at the water fountain and being like, no one said, Billy says to Stu, no one said that you were the killer. And just how, he gives him that look and stuff. And it's just so obvious. But, you never know who it was the first time you see it. And it's just crazy. Sydney's at home that night, and she gets a phone call. And she thinks it's Randy. And it's really actually the killer. She's, it's Randy, I know it's you, Randy, and all that. And then he's like, I'm not Randy. And you hear that score hit. It's such a chilling moment in the movie. But you meet Dewey. And I recently rewatched this movie for this video, and I watched it with a buddy who had never seen it, but he had seen Scary Movie. That's the one thing. This movie is pretty perfect. The one thing that the Scary Movie movies have ruined so many good horror movies. I love Scary Movie, but it's like my buddy, Dewey shows up, and he sees Dewey, and he was like, he starts laughing, and I'm like, you saw Scary Movie, and he's like, yeah. I'm just like, those movies have ruined so many good horror movies. It's crazy, but he, it's just, that's the one thing I hate. I love Scary Movie, and I love Scream. Scream's one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but it does suck. But, all these killing, the killing had happened, and the media, it's crazy. I was watching it, and, I never thought about it, but this time when I rewatched it, it's for the, 100th time. The media, shows the mask of the killer. This is what the killer's wearing. And of course, there's going to be some jackasses out there that are going to, that are going to be running around with the mask on and stuff. And of course, that happened. And I love, they try to give you little hints throughout the movie that it could be this person and it could be this person. Like, the principal yells at these two students who are dressed in the Ghostface costume. He has a pair of scissors in his hands. And the principal, played by Henry Winkler. And he's telling him, this is not funny. And he's cutting up the mask with it. And he's like, and he tells him, he puts the knife up to the kid. And I'm like, okay, maybe. I mean, I don't think he's the killer, but it tries to hint throughout the movie that it could be anybody. And I think that's done so well, because you really don't know who it is the first time you see it. But I love that scene, and I love Henry Winkler in this movie. He's great as Principal Hempry. But it just blows my mind that the media would show the mask, and I'm just like, that's what would happen though. The media would be all over that, showing the mask. So, I mean, it's very realistic. But, there's a curfew set because of the killings, and they, all the kids decide to have a party, like one does. And, they get to the party, and Tatum, Sydney's best friend, goes out to get beers out of the fridge. And her death scene is just, again, another thing that Scary Movie has ruined, because, again, my friend that has never seen the movie was watching it and started laughing again because he saw Scary Movie. But that death is just, it's crazy. And that's really where it showcases how this is probably a kid, because of how unprofessional this person is at killing, and how, he's tripping and falling, and she's kicking his ass, and I just thought, I'm just like, it's perfect, and it makes it scarier because it's just so realistic. But her death, the garage door death, she tries to go through the doggy door, and it goes up, and it's a creative kill, I mean, obviously you weren't going to fit through that doggy door, but Yeah, what else was she gonna do? The door wouldn't go up. But yeah, really, really great kill though. One of my favorite parts of the entire movie is that all the kids, Randy has all the kids at the party watching John Carpenter's Halloween. I think that is just, and Randy starts to do his rules in horror movies. He tells the rules in horror movies. And, he says, you can never do drugs, never have sex, the virgin always lives, and Randy's like my favorite character in this entire movie because I can relate to him so much because of all of the movie stuff, him working at the movie store, the Blockbuster and all that, and I can relate to him more than anybody, so that's why he's probably my favorite character in this first one. I love when Dewey walks into the house to investigate, and he walks in, Halloween's still playing on the TV screen. And basically Wes Craven just used the score from Halloween, and it was just so perfect. And I just love how that just throughout the ending of this movie, that movie just keeps playing, and it's perfect. You hear that do 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 and all that, and it's so well done. I love that. But after Sydney does the deed with her boyfriend, and she's not a virgin anymore, and all that, she comes down. The killer comes in the room after all that, kills. We think he kills Billy. She goes back downstairs and she finds Tatum. But she's in the house, and Stu and Randy are walking up the stairs, and they're both, he's the killer, he's the killer. And Sydney doesn't know what to do, and she just slams the door in their face, screw you guys, and it's like, what do you do in that situation? It's like both your friends are, they're both your friends, and one of them is the killer. They're both saying that one's the killer. It's just, what do you do in that situation besides slam the door in their face or shoot both of them, But then, of course, Billy, I love when he shows up and he's like, oh, look, corn syrup, it's not real blood. And I love the motive between the two, and, how he, that motive that he has for killing her mom. Is he killed Sydney's mom. That was the first, how Sydney's mom got murdered, and Billy has a reason because she had an affair with his dad. And, he has that motive, and I love how Stu is just crazy. He just wants to kill. And, he's like talking, and he's got the drool running out of his mouth, and while he's talking, and he's like, telling her, this is why I did it, and it's like, gotta hand it to Matthew Lillard. I mean, it is the best performance in this movie. He just captivates that craziness so perfectly. But that scene when they're stabbing each other, and he's like, you stab me, and then I'll stab you, he stabs him, and he's like, oh man, you didn't have to go so deep, and then he stabs him, and then Billy starts stabbing Stu like 4 or 5 times, and he's like, man, I'm getting a little oozy here. It's like one of the best scenes, if not the best scene of the movie, when he's saying he's getting oozy, and then Sydney gets the upper hand on him, and he's on the phone. He's bleeding out of his mouth, and he's starting to, I think I'm dying here, man. And Sydney's talking to him on the phone. She's got the upper hand on him. I love it, but he's like, my mom and dad are gonna kill me. It was just like such a great performance by Matthew Lillard. I love him in this movie. And then Sydney throws the TV on Stu, which inevitably kills him. But I really, really hope Matthew Lillard is like a surprise and comes back in the 5th one coming out in January, because I would love to see Matthew Lillard play Stu again. And then Gail bursts through the door. She's all messed up. They wrecked that van and all that, trying to get away. Billy's coming after her, and she just shoots right in the chest. And Randy says, Randy's there. Randy's still alive, and he says, killer always comes back. He comes back up for one last kind of jump scare, and Sydney just pops him right in the head. But I thought that was an awesome ending to the movie. And it's cool how it so many sequels. I mean, the 3rd one's not great, but that's probably the weakest one. But I mean, I love the second and the fourth one a lot, and I'm really hoping that the fifth one's going to be great. I'm really, really excited for it. I love this movie. I know I basically broke down the entire movie. I just really wanted to go through it and talk about everything. But this is definitely top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. I've always loved this movie ever since I tricked my mom into buying it for me, So, for my score, obviously, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm going to give it 100%. It is spot on perfect. I can't think of anything. Like I said, the only thing that sucks is that Scary Movie kind of ruined it a little bit. But other than that, this movie is spot on perfect. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Nelson Reviews. Follow me on Letterboxd at Nelson48. Peace out.